you doing? Last one in by the round.
I didn't know. I never.
Is that good? How are you doing? Right on time.
We'd like to call this evening's meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. Welcome our listening audience at WCBU as well as cable channel 22 and those watching live stream. Madam Clerk, the council microphones are open for roll call.
Mayor Artis.
Present.
Councilmember Ali.
Present.
Councilmember Sear.
Here.
Councilmember Grayeb.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen. Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Montalongo. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Euler.
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
Councilmember Reckriegel. You have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a housekeeping piece of information to read regarding attendance in accordance with Governor J.B. Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-43, which continues to limit any gatherings of more than 50 people, and Executive Order 2020-44, requiring the provision of video, audio, or telephonic access to meetings, and the CDC recommending social distancing of at least 6 feet between persons. City Hall is implementing changes and restrictions for the City Council meeting on July the 14th, 2020, while complying with the Open Meetings Act. The council meeting will be conducted in person with members of council present in council chambers with plexiglass barriers, with department heads in their offices and some city staff in room 404 with the ability to remotely answer questions while maintaining a 6-foot distance. 15 members of the public and 1 member of the media will be present inside council chambers. Temperature screenings are required upon entry to City Hall, and face coverings are always required while inside. Members of the public and media are invited to watch through the live stream, YouTube, television channel 22, or through WCB radio. Submissions for public comment were received through the city clerk's office. The agenda, minutes, and video podcast of the meeting will be available online through the city's website. Now I would invite everyone to join us for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one proclamation that I'm going to read this evening, and then we're going to have comment by Director Black afterwards. This is Great Neighbor Appreciation Week. Whereas the City of Peoria Community Development Department aims to create a safer, cleaner, and more connected Peoria, and whereas neighborhoods play an integral part in maintaining and promoting a high quality of life in the City of Peoria, and whereas in a world where technology and isolation due to COVID-19 has caused a separation in the bonds of our local community, it's the utmost importance to honor our neighbors who go above and beyond to forge a sense of community. And whereas the City of Peoria Community Development Department is hosting the 5th annual Great Neighbor Appreciation Week with a week-long celebration to encourage residents to reach out to their neighbors, create new friends, and express gratitude to those who make our neighborhoods and the city a great place to live. And whereas Great Neighbor Appreciation Week provides the residents of Peoria with opportunities to show their appreciation for their neighbors, while being reminded of what it means to be a great neighbor. Now, therefore, I, Jamardis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby proclaim Great Neighbor Appreciation Week in Peoria. Director Black, I believe, is in room 404. Director?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the proclamation. This is always a great week for the Community Development Department and all of our partners in Peoria. We spend most of the year focused on enforcing the rules and regulations that the City Council has adopted. This is really a week where we can focus on thanking everyone and, frankly, the majority of Peoria residents and businesses who are doing the right thing without any prodding or prompting from the city. So for the rest of this week, we will be visiting individual properties and businesses, thanking them for keeping everything looking great. And then we will end the week this Friday at noon down at Manual High School with one of our weekly neighborhood cleanups. And we'd invite anyone who wants to help out for an hour or so to come down and join us. We have water and gloves and trash bags. If someone does want to come and join us, please wear a face covering. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Black, and thank you to your team and community development. This year is particularly challenging, coordinating a lot of these events and still maintaining proper distancing and PPE and so on, but we trust that we'll be out in the community too, but make sure that as you're out and around at the different events that you express our thanks to all those very important neighborhood leaders who do so much work for us in keeping their neighborhood strong. Thank you. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Mayor, I move to approve the minutes of the regular joint town board and city council meeting held on June 9th, 2020 as printed.
Seconded by Councilmember Graham. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Our first item is a township item 20-189 is a request from the town officials to approve the June 2020 actual expenditures and to approve the July 2020 anticipated expenditures for the town of the city of Peoria.
Thank you. Trustee Graham.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the expenditures as outlined.
Seconded by Trustee Kelly. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. And the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at the consent agenda. 20-182 is a request to defer until July 28th the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix A, the Unified Development Code, relating to short-term rentals. 20-190 is an appointment by Mayor Ardis to the Advisory Committee on Police and Community Relations with a request to concur of Allison Galvin. 20-191 is a request to receive and file the month ended May 31st, 2020 unaudited financial report, and that concludes your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any items to remove from consent this evening? Seeing none, I have a motion to approve, seconded by Councilman Graham, seconded by Councilman Regenbach. Seeing no discussion, please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at regular business. 20-192 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency.
Councilmember Regenbach.
Move for the approval.
Motion to approve, seconded by Councilman Kelly. Discussion on this item. Councilman Montalongo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. City Manager, do you Could you give a report back to the council and the public here on expenses made that were not part of the budget as a result of the emergency, local state of emergency?
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, we have the report back number 7, which was sent out to council. I think everyone should have it on your desk. If you'll take a look at this document, it should be underneath the spreadsheet that will talk about the budget. But the very first council report back includes the information pertaining to the expenses through the end of June that the city has incurred due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. To date, including the library and the Civic Center, we have incurred $1.1 million worth of expenses, nearly 7,500 hours of straight time and benefits, 1,500 hours of overtime and benefits, and then direct expenditures of the city of about $304,000. All of these expenses, as this report back talks about, we will be submitting either to FEMA for reimbursement through the Stafford Act, which is a 75% reimbursement rate, or through the allocation that we've received from the state. The CURES fund is what it's called. It's the coronavirus relief funds that have been allocated to the state. We are eligible for up to $4.7 million of reimbursement through that pot of money. So we will be looking at trying to reimburse through that. Councilman, you had also asked at the last meeting for when were the last times that we had been reimbursed. That would be report back number 2 here, which says that in the last 11 years, we've been reimbursed 3 times. In 2011, we received $226,000 from FEMA for the severe winter storms that we had that year. In 2013, we received $430,000 for the flood-related expenses that occurred in that flood. And then in 2014, we had a culvert that was damaged in some flooding, and we received $78,000 for that. So those were the 3 years that we did receive reimbursements.
Just a quick question on approval for expenses. So do these come before the money's being spent from a department to you for your approval, or how does that process work?
So the way the process works, most of the straight time and the time we just asked our employees to start coding their hours that they're working. So that's the predominant amount of money that we've been spending. The other expenses, the $300,000 in expenses, most of that has been the purchase of personal protective equipment, PPE, masks, things like that. The cost of this plexiglass that we have in between us is one of those costs that have been incurred. The way that it works when we have these types of expenses that run through, the department that's making the purchase will work with the purchasing department to make sure that the expense is being made. And then right now, any expense over $5,000, the assistant city manager is reviewing those as well. So we're going through that process with the approval.
Sure. I guess in part of this approval for you and the mayor, so are these just expenditures for you, or are these both you and the mayor?
These are the direct city expenses, not that these aren't expenses that the city manager or the mayor have incurred. These are expenses that the city government has incurred for these specific related expenses related to the pandemic.
You giving the green light or the mayor giving the green light for approval? Who does that? I'm just guessing. Is it
the manager?
both?
The manager gives the green light for the approval.
Okay, so you totally 100% given the approval for all of these expenses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No other questions?
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ali.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Urick, is there a maximum reimbursement from FEMA or a maximum reimbursement from CURES Act?
Not from FEMA necessarily. The FEMA, we can get reimbursed for eligible expenses. And not everything on this list will be eligible through FEMA. But everything on this list we're hoping will be eligible as we start to submit those expenses through the state's program. That has a limit of $4.7 million on it. So these are the expenses that we've incurred in the first 3 months of the program. And that the expenses through the state, the 4.7, is open between now and the end of the calendar year. So So that's the time frame of which we'll try and seek the state reimbursement, and then hopefully we'll see if there's other reimbursement that may come or other funding that may come through the federal government as well.
So that maximum of 4.7 million, that is the maximum for Peoria.
That's the maximum for the city of Peoria. It's based on our population. The county has a different number. It's like 1.56 million. Bartonville, Chillicothe, all 1,298 municipalities throughout the, let me take that back. All the municipalities outside of the 5 largest counties in the state are eligible for reimbursement from the state of Illinois. Those 5 largest counties in the state and the city of Chicago each received a direct allocation of funding. So where I used to work was Lake County, Illinois. Lake County received $121 million. They'll allocate that to all of the municipalities inside Lake County. But everywhere else has to go through the state to get their reimbursement.
Okay, and then within that 4.7 million, how much do you anticipate?
I'm hopeful that we will be able to structure programs or reimbursements not only for us, but for the community, that we keep that $4.7 million here in Peoria. If we can't, it will be because the state has said that we can't. But we'll be coming back to you with some recommendations here in the next couple of weeks about that as well.
I was hoping you would say that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing no further lights. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 8 ayes, 1 nay. Councilmember Montalongo. Madam Clerk.
20-193 is a request to approve a loan from the city's revolving loan fund to Folden Ventures LLC, Papa Shot LLC, and Anthony Stucker in the amount of $100,000 to authorize the city manager to execute the necessary documents.
Councilmember Willer.
Move to approve.
And to approve, seconded Councilman Regenbach. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at unfinished business. 20-141 is a request to approve a voluntary separation incentive for sworn full-time fire employees.
Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. As there may be some information that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks, I would move to defer this for 2 weeks.
Okay. Motion to defer to the next meeting. Seconded Councilman Kelly. Discussion on the deferral. Councilmember Ali.
Yes, I would like to ask the city manager to explain why this is specifically for fire rather than public safety. Why does it exclude police? Why has this been modified to exclude
Just
police?
for point of order, it's the discussion has to be revolved about the deferral itself, not the particulars of it. So that's the motion on the floor. We can, after this gets over, we can request that information back.
Okay.
Okay. But so the discussion has to be just on the deferral. Thank you. Councilman Montalongo?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I didn't hear the reason why there was a deferral called. We got a little echo in here with these new devices.
No problem. Understanding that there may be some additional information that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks on a couple of different pieces, either through revenue side or some other conversations that may be out there, maybe more information that might be pertinent to this. So just asking for a 2-week deferral.
I'm seeing no further lights. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20-125 is a request to approve the recommended 2020 to 2021 budget restructuring as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you. I really don't have any asks of the council this evening. Just a quick update with regards to the budget. We put together a spreadsheet that I sent out to you all yesterday that included the revisions that we've been looking at to revenues. We've been fortunate now over the last couple of months to see some additional revenue coming in. Particularly, we've been able to revise downward some of, or revise upward, I should say, some of our revenue projections based upon what we've been seeing coming in. When we originally looked at the numbers, we saw that our sales tax numbers we were anticipating would be down possibly as much on the local side as 40%. We're now looking at it closer to 27%. The state sales taxes, we were thinking it would be down by a third. Now we're thinking it might be closer to 14%. We're still concerned about our hotels in town. Those revenues are still anticipated to be 43% down. Restaurant taxes, 28% down. But we also have seen, and the numbers bore out this morning, we got the revenue numbers for the most recent month from of income tax dollars. At least for the immediate part of this fiscal year, our income tax and corporate income tax we receive through the personal property replacement tax dollars are doing somewhat better from the state's perspective. I'm tempering that because what it really means is that next year, after the full effects of people that are being unemployed and the corporations not earning as much, will feel that. And the anticipation from IML and their estimates are that we should anticipate that both on the personal income tax side, that next year that'll be down 10%, and then on the corporate income tax side, that it may be closer to 25% down next year. And so while it's good news, at least in this year, that's where this revenue situation is going to linger for the time being. The result of this is that with these additional stronger revenue projections, we're not anticipating having to borrow $20 million now. It would be looking at a working cash bond of only $15 million is what we're anticipating with this. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Just one other thing, I know that Councilman Ruckriegel had asked, and I sent out to you, to the council this evening, just an approximation of what are we looking at when we're talking about revenue loss? What does that mean in terms of actual economic impact inside the city of Peoria? And a best estimate that we could come up with right now is that we're thinking that the real impact so far of this pandemic is about $360 million to our local economy. And so that's the number that we're looking at based upon all the revenue streams. And it may be higher as we're really not very, we don't have very good data to determine how much we're actually seeing in revenue loss. So on the income tax side. So
Questions for the manager, Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, I'm, as usual, a little confused. If we have, if this passes, if this motion passes, are all these numbers and all these projections, I mean, I'm not sure I get what's going on. For instance, we've got the tax increase in these numbers.
Councilman, I'm not asking that the council vote on anything tonight. I'm just providing you an update to the revenue projections based upon what we've been seeing so far with the revenues that have been coming in. So there's no motion that we're asking for this evening.
It'll be a receive and file, so it won't be the communication is a request to approve, which to your point, Councilman Kelly. So tonight's motion, when we make it, will be a motion to receive and file. Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. And City Manager here, thank you very much for putting this information together. There's a lot of information in what really is kind of a short synopsis there, and I know it took a lot of time to be able to do that. It probably more clearly shows to our full economic picture as far as the city where the real impact has been, and since we know that it's really the top line from businesses that really drive everything else, I think this is an important piece for us and the community to know. Can we put that on the website with the report backs as well?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
And again, thank you very much for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Euler.
Move to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file, seconded by Councilman Sear. Is there any further discussion on this item? Councilman Gribb.
Mr. Manager, I appreciate your exposition of the doomsday scenario, which all of us are trying to avoid. So we will hope and pray that our money picture improves considerably as our lawmakers in Washington, D.C. do their thing before they recess, getting ready for the November election. Then at that point, I think we can get it down to how much doomsday we're going to have to experience here in Peoria. But the specificity here was, it was absolutely brutal what this could mean for service delivery to our citizens. So appreciate that candor. That's the kind of thing the policymakers need to hear. I think Councilor Ruckriegel can't hear as well with these partitions, but did you suggest that maybe this document be put online for our citizens to see?
The last report back that he did for myself that didn't make the official report back, that we all got in the email, that just be attached to the report backs.
To Councilman, the information is out there under the council meeting info page on our website. So if you go to the home page and then you go to the right side, we have a couple of places where you can jump to different locations on the web. And under council meeting info, all of this material is included out there right now.
And I know I've been discussing this with a number of you. I think one of the most difficult aspects of the pandemic is our inability to engage directly with our constituents. And when we're able to really go onto the road and go out to the neighborhoods and explain these things, because let's face it, not everybody watches Treasurer Roberts or listens to WCBU or listens to the radio. I think we need to have an opportunity to, once we get that number down, that's going to be so problematic and of almost a doomsday type proportion. It would be nice if we could have a large enough space where citizens could come, much as they are today, with masks, consistent with social distancing requirements that exist then, and to put onto the screen exactly what we're looking at and what some of the possibilities are to close that gap. And if we really do want to see that type of cut in service delivery, I think it would be very instructive for us to get feedback of that nature, maybe one or two meetings strategically placed in the city. And Mayor, you and I were talking about this. I don't think the council would have any problem with that, getting input, because what we're facing here is almost unprecedented. Certainly in my years on the council, and the whole could be, even with action in Washington, D.C., quite large and a huge impact on service delivery in all of our neighborhoods. And I don't care where you live in Peoria, you live in a neighborhood. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman. Councilmember Ali.
Thank you, Mayor. I heard a motion to receive and file, but I see a action item to approve the restructuring. So can I get a clarification on
That was
what we're voting on?
Yeah, that was what we just mentioned. That was Councilman Kelly's question, and the manager indicated that this is for information, so we're not making a motion to approve. We're just making a motion to receive and file this information this evening.
Okay, so it will come back at some point as
Yes.
an action item?
All of it will. All the different pieces of it will come back.
Okay, why was it listed as it is? Why was it listed to approve rather than as an information?
It's been on the
item?
agenda every time that it's been on the agenda.
It's been listed this way under unfinished business. So
Okay. I just want, there's property tax recommended increase in here. I just think that we need to be clear to the public, to ourselves, what we're looking at and what we're voting on every time. And with it reading that way, a vote would mean a property tax increase of $66.66 for a $100,000 house. I mean, there's a lot in here that, that needs to be communicated out clearly to the public. And I'm okay with the receive and file, but I'm definitely not okay with just approving the structure as it is right now. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Sear?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, number one, thank you very much from Hall just for all this hard work you've been doing. Helps me a lot, and I'm sure it helps my colleague to have up-to-date information. I know there's the nature of your report, there's just a lot of assumptions. As the timeline change for us to, one time we'll have to make some decision. As the timeline change as to when we need to make a decision or a final decision?
Well, as I stated in the fourth report back in section 7, staff is not prepared to make any workforce reductions other than the vacant positions until we see the effects of the first month of the window of the ERI opening. So we wouldn't anticipate making any changes until September. We're also really, as Councilman Graham said, we're still waiting to see what deliberations Congress comes up with at this point in time. So we're not planning on making any workforce changes, even though Council has given us that direction to go forward with it until September 1 at the earliest.
Oh, because this is very fluid. The goalpost is moving all the time. I'm a little bit like Councilman Kelly here. What is our hole right now? I mean, we started this process, we're about $52 to $54 million. It changes to a lot better to in the 40s. Where we're at today, roughly?
Well, roughly where you're at is Council has not made any decisions on public safety, and Council has not made any decisions on the borrowing to borrow for any kind of working cash. So those are the two areas that are still outstanding that Council hasn't given any direction back to us to kind of close this package up. So those are the two areas. As we said, based upon the revenues tonight, we're only looking at borrowing $15 million instead of $20 million. And then the outstanding public safety side is probably another $3 million that we're talking about overall combined. So,
because when I look at item 20-125, I see $26.7 million cut in the CIP program. Then we debt restructuring of $10 million we saved there. That's $36 million. Then at the time was a $20 million line of credit or bond, but now we're down to 15. So I don't want to count that, but I know there's also another $20 million for operational cuts. So that's just the three that I thought we made decision on. It's about $46 million basically, or roughly. So as last time you and I had a discussion, we were around $40 million. But that's not counting 2021, understand that. But so are we almost there? And to Mr. Graham's point, no, we started this process many months ago. We were looking at $30 million bond. Now we're down to 15. Someone told me we might get 15 to 20 from the Fed, which means who knows about that. I mean, there's just a lot of assumption, basically, correct?
that's absolutely correct. And that's one of the reasons why right now we're not making any recommendations to ask you to go forward with this. We just want to wait and see one more month and see where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any additional lights. I will remind the listening audience, this is not a motion to approve the restructuring. This is a motion to receive and file the information. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
If there's no further unfinished business,
Do we have any further unfinished business this evening? Unfinished? Councilmember Ali?
I think this is where I can ask the question about police, VSI. Okay. Mr. Urick, can you explain the change from public safety to fire employees only?
Well, part of the reason for that is that we currently have 9 vacant positions in the police department. We did eliminate some. We're starting to fill some of those police positions. The concern is that if we offer the VSI, we're going to accelerate the position and the challenge of having officers out on the street. It takes almost 10 months from the time somebody is hired until they're able to be out on the street alone. And so it's a very long lead time. Even with the natural retirements that we may see between this year and next, we may not be able to fill all the positions that we have available to us. And so offering a VSI will just accelerate that problem that we have in the police department. So that's the main reason why, after we discussed it and deliberated on it internally as staff, we said let's just limit it to the fire department right now.
Okay, so then that would change the scenario from police layoffs then?
No, it doesn't change the scenario from police layoffs because of the number of vacant positions they had. We're still not talking about laying off any positions. We still plan on in September, hiring the 9 officers, 4 of which are currently in the Community First program, and that will then transition into being police officers. It's just we know that we're going to have probably 3 or 4 more retirements this year. And then now you start to have to fill another class with another group of people coming in January, and then just the natural hiring cycle means that we need to keep going forward with that. So if we offered a VSI on the police side, it would just exacerbate that problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further unfinished business? Madam Clerk?
We would be at new business.
New business come before the council. New business, Councilman Riggenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank Chief Marion and the command staff at the police department for their outside-of-the-box thinking, and it's with all the issues going on and all the talk about community policing going on around the country, to see some good things happening here in our community is really reassuring. We had the official opening of the Police Resource Center on Wisconsin Avenue this past week. That's the second resource center that our department has put together, the other one being down by Harrison Homes. And I think it's really important for folks to know that the resources are available out there, and that we are looking to be more creative. And it's just wonderful to see with our residential officers and now with these resource centers in the neighborhoods, some of the things that the Peoria Police Department's doing. So thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you. Any additional new business? I'll make a real quick comment. I had a discussion this morning with Monica Hendrickson from the Health Department, who is Monica and her team have been doing an outstanding job of negotiating through the COVID situation. I would like to just reinforce to the community the importance of proper etiquette on masking and also social distancing. Right now, we're in a fairly good place, but everybody's seeing the dynamic around the country with this rapid explosion of COVID in places that have and have not experienced it in the past. So I just appeal to everyone, we do not want to go back to that place. And just please don't get overconfident that we're over the hump, because we likely aren't. But if we do everything that we can do in our community to keep each other safe, it's going to be worth the minor inconvenience in the long run. Our business people that are just getting the doors open back up at half their capacity, they're really not making money yet. A lot of them might be breaking even. And we need to get them to that place where we can increase the amount of people that can come into their businesses, but it's not going to happen if we get careless on on the safety aspect of this. We just want to thank everybody who has been diligent about this. Thanks to all the businesses who are putting so much time into providing safe, clean environments for their customers, and let's just keep working hard on that. The other thing that Monica asked me to mention is if you do happen to get a phone call from someone that's doing contact tracing on someone that has identified as having symptoms, please participate. Please participate in quarantining yourself, giving any other information about potential people, other people that may have been exposed. That is really how this disease exponentially grows. It's when people are infected, they don't realize it, and then they continue to spread. So thank you to Monica from the Health Department for offering those two pieces of advice, and we hope our community heeds that. Madam Clerk.
We're at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council.
Okay, citizens to address. All we need is your name for the record. And first up, we have Denise Jackson.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address the Peoria City Council. And my name is Denise Jackson. I'm a board member of Southside Community United for Change, and I am just making a few comments tonight in reference to a letter that Southside Community United for Change emailed to the City Council as well as the mayor. And it's in reference to redevelopment of Western Avenue. First of all, I'd like to thank those of you who did respond to the email letter. Thank you, Councilman Graham, Councilman Rodrigo, and Council Member Moore, who's not here tonight. But we just wanted an opportunity to speak for the record. SCUC, Southside Community United for Change, board members were notified back in May by Councilwoman Denise Moore that the Western Avenue redevelopment project was being delayed due to COVID-19 restraints that are being impacted on the city's budget, which you all have talked about tonight. And she told us that it's going to happen, but in fact, it would not start until next year. She told us the money's there, and we were told by Councilwoman Moore that instead, construction on the brand new fire station on Western Avenue and Howard would start, which we support. Just for purposes of foundation, I just want to talk a little bit about our involvement with the Western Avenue redevelopment project. Western Avenue redevelopment was one of several goals that evolved out of a neighborhood academy that SCUC hosted, about 6 years ago. At that time, we talked about Western Avenue, what it was like in its heyday. We briefed Councilwoman Moore about Western Avenue when it was a thriving business district in the 70s and 80s. It was a combination of local businesses and some franchises. We had back then Shire's Dairy, we had Lincoln Avenue Pharmacy, we had Del Farm Grocery Store, Burger King, Bogart Drug Store. Next to that, there was a music store. And I'm happy to say today that we still have Pearson's Mattress open after nearly 100 years, still open and thriving at the corner of Western and Garden. Since that time, people have moved, businesses have closed, and the infrastructure has deteriorated, and the roads are among some of the worst in Southtown. SCUC believes that Western Avenue has potential. We believe that Western Avenue, like the Warehouse District, can once again become a thriving business community. So since then, we've had several conversations with Councilmember Moore. In the early part of this process, she brought in a developer from Chicago. We were somewhat lofty in our hopes. We had hoped that Western Avenue would be redeveloped in what we thought was the busiest area from Howard to Martin Luther King Drive up the hill. But in discussions with Councilwoman Moore, we were told that that part of the road belonged to the state. And at that time, she informed us the state was out of money. So the city instead was going to focus its attention on Howard down to Adams Street. So in the 5 years since we have been talking about this project, we've noticed there have been similar projects that have been completed in neighborhoods around the city. The first one, Main and University, beautiful project. The East Bluff, Forest Hill between Sheridan Road and Knoxville, University near Walmart, Northmore Road, which was in worse condition prior to reconstruction, similar to what Western is facing right now. All these projects have been done and completed. Our roads in Southtown, which includes Western Avenue, with the exception of MacArthur Highway Bridge, have remained untouched. So, in the final public meeting that was held March 3rd, 2019, residents were reassured that the project would happen this year. Since that meeting, I've had the opportunity to have email conversations with 2 city engineers about the project. Most recently, I received an email dated March 25th, 2020, and it stated, IDOT's indication is that the project will start this summer, 2020, with plans to rebuild Western Avenue from Marquette to Howett in 2020, this summer, and from Jefferson to Marquette in 2021, and from Adams to near Jefferson in 2022. SC was told just a couple of months ago, as I mentioned in a phone conference call with Councilwoman Moore, that Western Avenue was not going to start this year due to the COVID city budget constraints. We understand that the city has had to work with IDOT and go through the process of receiving bids. That being said, our question tonight is, since we've been waiting so long for this project to start, why did the city not begin the bidding process in January of this year or sometime last year? Now, we understand that bids have now been pushed back, and that process will start in January of 2021 and will go through March. We believe that if the city had started the bidding process at least in January of this year or sometime last year, that would have given us an opportunity to get on schedule to start the project this July, like we have been promised and told over and over again. This is not a new process for the city. The same thing has been done expeditiously for those communities that I mentioned in and around the city that have had reconstruction projects. Once again, Southside residents have been told to wait. If the money for Western Avenue redevelopment is there, why not start the work now? There are lots of people who are out of jobs. We understand COVID-19 has delayed many projects. But keep in mind, it did not stop the state of Illinois from moving forward on its $45 billion Rebuild Illinois project that has been planned within the last 2 years under Governor J.B. Pritzker's leadership. SCUC has been asking and waiting for Western Avenue redevelopment to start in about 5 years, and nothing's happened. The city of Peoria, I love, but I'm sad to say the city of Peoria has a history of neglect when it comes to Southtown redevelopment that dates back to the 70s. That's when hundreds of residents were forced out of their homes through eminent domain to make way for the University of Illinois College of Medicine's school, with the promise that Southtown redevelopment would be coming soon. Nothing's happened. We've watched one administration after another take money and redevelop areas everywhere except in Southtown. The Warehouse District is the new baby, but across MacArthur, our community continues to be neglected. This is why 61605, my neighborhood, is the poorest zip code in the state, some say in the country. We would like for this type of systemic, economic, and social racism to stop. We could have easily gathered 200 to 300 people to protest on Western Avenue, or better yet, outside City Hall about Peoria's practices. But in the interest of public safety, considering the health pandemic that's currently we're all dealing with, SCUC has decided to come to City Hall and ask you, the full council, to please move forward on the work slated for Western Avenue now in the summer of 2020 rather than put it off until next year. We're tired of meetings. We are tired of delays. We are tired of lies, and we are tired of neglect from City Hall. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
We have an executive session.
Council Peterson.
We have an executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 122C11 for pending litigation and 2C21 for closed session minutes.
Thank you. We have a motion to go into executive session. Councilman Ruckriegel, seconded Councilman Sear. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. We have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting. Councilman Sear, seconded Councilman Euler. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. We'd like to thank our audiences on the various medias for listening this evening. Tonight's council meeting is adjourned.